All right, so to start off, I know a lot of you talked about obstacles you face coming into the community. So what are some of the most important things to think about when trying to welcome people into the community? And also on the flip side, what are things that can be intimidating or discouraging or unwelcoming to people new to the community?
I can talk about something that bothers me a lot that people do when you're learning. So my school instituted this rule called no touching. So this is really important, and what it means is when you're teaching someone, especially something technologically, people who are very advanced tend to have this thing where they take your computer and they're like, oh, I'll just do it for you. And then you don't learn, and you're like, oh, so like my problem is fixed, but like my problem isn't really fixed because I don't know what I've done wrong. So no touching is like a really important thing not to do to people you're mentoring.
One of the more important things that happened to me when I was getting started, since I come from an audio background, I started doing Max MSP. And since I'm from Puerto Rico, like most of the people or everyone that knew something about Max was online. This is like 2009, more or less. And when I asked questions online, it's like I didn't get any responses. And this is a very basic question. It was, I don't know, maybe something to do with an oscillator or something like that. But when I didn't get any answer at all online, then obviously that's super demotivating because I couldn't get past that first barrier. So first barriers are very important to sort of like nurture and get past that. So I think it has to do with, well, at the moment I thought it had to do with sort of like Max being proprietary, and the knowledge that comes from working with something proprietary is sort of like held on to stronger than sort of like an open source alternative, which is what happened to me. So when that happened, I was sort of demotivated to work with Max, and then I learned about PD, and then when I used PD and I ran into the exact same problem because it's basically the same software, I tried to ask on the mailing list or the forum again, and immediately I got a lot more answers. I solved my problem and I was able to get further. So I think like not being jealous of the knowledge that you have is important, and nurturing people's first barriers, like helping them through it.
So going along with that, the open source community faces a lot of challenges with communication that come along with it. So what can we do to avoid aggression? And also, if there are cases of aggression or microaggression, how should that be handled in that community setting?
I mean, zero tolerance. I mean, just zero tolerance, personally.
So this week with P5 especially, we're looking to draft a code of conduct and a community statement. So what are some things that you all feel should definitely be included in that statement to address these issues?
I think it's a little bit more complicated than just like, I mean, when I hear zero tolerance, it's going to be like, oh, this person does, let's say, a microaggression against another person online. And then, so you don't exclude that person or like demotivate them so they leave the community. So you basically kick someone else out of the community, right? Oh, that's what it sort of like feels like. Yeah. But, you know, I don't know. It's sort of like, it's hard to determine where being defensive begins and where being aggressive begins. It would be an aggression against that person as well, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe.
I think the way Lauren has been lately for the past year on the issues has been really great, and someone is showing that some sort of micro or microaggression. She's really fantastic about just making a comment somewhere between nothing and a call out, and not necessarily a full aggressive call out, to just nudge someone that whether or not they meant it, the language as it's presented in text might not be somewhat aggressive. And it seems to work more often than not, in cases where it doesn't. But it has been really nice to be the online community where that's happening.
In a real life situation, we face more of very small misunderstandings as opposed to very intentional aggression, such as for ESL students, there's a lot of things that they miss, or the cultural connotations that is really hard to translate. So it might be interpreted as aggression. And so what we try to do is sort of respect the differences and then be patient with each other. And we did work on a code of conduct, and soon we realized that we can't do a zero tolerance policy in a multicultural environment. So having a general expectation and trust was more important than having a rigid structure in that manner. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a giant amount of energy to build a community. And there needs to be a trust and love before there's a rule or code of conduct. So I think letting the participants understand each other and then get interested and devoted to each other probably should come before setting up the rules.
I think, one thing, one proactive thing we do with students at Olin in their first year, we don't call them freshmen, we call them first year students. And one of the things we do on team collaborative projects is we have them identify and separate the team's goals from their individual learning goals. So what that means then is that if a student is on a team who is particularly strong in coding skills already, and then there's another student whose coding skills are rather much more in the beginner stage, that student who's got low CAD skills can say, well, my learning goal for the project, right, in addition to the project's team shared goals, my learning goal is to get better at CAD. And so then it becomes incumbent upon the team to also let that person gain more technical skill at a moment where they might actually opt for skills that are complementary to the tech skills instead because they're good in that area, right? And then you get a further separation of technical literacy and so on. So we found that to be really useful to say, look, everybody's got to acknowledge that there are individual learning goals here too. And it may not be the most efficient way, but it's the way for both the team to get its work done and for individuals to kind of reach, to kind of push themselves and for people to honor and be patient, around that stuff.
Can I add one more thing? I think in this technical context, there's a very common tendency to have a situation where there's someone with technical expertise has more supremacy or more attention, right? So one way that we try to avoid that is to celebrate everyone's talent by sharing what they are doing, where they're from, a very short presentation in a very kind of a celebratory manner, and that empowers everyone that they are contributing to the community. And so it's not so much about the code in the end, it's about who you are and what you want to learn from that. And that also comes in with sort of representing the community to be more than just the programmers or just the language that we're trying to build, but the culture that we're trying to construct together.
When do you do those celebrations? Do you do them
very first thing? So in the first week, yeah. I mean, maybe that's something that we should do here tomorrow or tonight. Is that sort of get to know each other.
Yeah. So when you're building a community of any type and trying to encourage these people from different countries, different backgrounds, all different skill levels, an obstacle that often comes with trying to promote diversity is people feel that they don't fit the stereotype or what they perceive as someone who should work in technology. So what advice would you give to a student who feels like they don't belong or feels like they're not right for the job?
I think for me, the way that happened is like, I just had to find people who were like me. So so the same way that you tried to find your community in Puerto Rico, I had to create that community in Seattle and find it. But it's not something that can come from like the top down, but it can be facilitated. So the thing that like people in the in-group can do is allow for that space and respect that space and not feel like, oh, I'm being pushed out of that group or something, but just respect that we need that space.
Thanks for the really great panel. So one thing I often hear I'm at MIT at the Media Lab, and a lot of people there are really excited about, broadening participation in engineering and programming, and it's really wonderful. But often the approach, I feel, is one where the focus is on how the opportunities of technology can benefit people working in other fields, and often like art or design fields. And I'm wondering what your perspectives are on how the powerful ideas present in art and design can inform engineering or programming fields.
The province of the humanities, art and design, right, has historically been about point of view and about meaning and about metaphor and about ambiguity and what seem to be contradictions that actually cohere together, right? And I think the point of view and the kind of irreducible complexity that is being alive, right, is very much the kind of first language of arts and design. And I think, no matter what you can do that's technically novel, right, is not the answer to why you should do that thing. And so I'm an artist teaching engineering, not like art for engineers, but teaching engineering, which is always surprising to me. But I found that I have a place there by realizing that being able to solve technical problems, yes, can be a liberatory practice, but not without the point of view that is the kind of complexity of the arts and design to say, what should I build and what kind of meaning will it make in the world? And nothing is made in a vacuum, right? It has all these cultural registers, and to be aware of that rich vocabulary is something that folks in tech need very much, seems to me.
Can I say something too, kind of following what Sara's mentioning? I was thinking about this panel kind of in parallel to recently watching *Halt and Catch Fire* and reading this long article in the New Yorker about a venture capitalist, and then watching the trailer for the new Steve Jobs movie. Like, all of these kind of cultural events around technology and its limitless potential were sort of, in a pop culture radar while I was preparing for the book. And I kept thinking that the kind of bottom line, or the clear story that was being told in all of these 3 different pop culture references was that, like, starting a business is cool, and like the coolest thing you can do is to start a business. That's kind of the story of all of these things. Halt and Catch Fire, Steve Jobs, venture capitalism, all of these kinds of things that are kind of attached to technology. Now, especially in a late capitalism, hopefully post-capitalism time, I think that Sara's right. I mean, the thing that I'm most excited about in terms of technology and engineering is to have a kind of criticality around it and think about what it is used for and how it can be culture. I mean, technology as culture is the central idea to processing and to P5 and to the internet and everything. So yeah, I mean, I guess I don't work in technology as such for just doing that one field, and I think that the kind of porosity and fluidity of disciplines and fields is the most exciting and like best hope we have, I think.
Yeah, to say one more thing, a different thing on the same question. I feel that learning how to program when you go to a computer science department across the world, really across most of the globe, is very much of a monoculture. And I think within our community, within the arts, we're exploring other ways of learning this way, of thinking other ways of learning these skills. And we're sort of opening up an idea that you can learn these powerful ways of thinking and creating, but you can learn them kind of a 180-degree different way. And I feel really strongly that learning should be largely about ability and about desire, and not just fitting into this technology monoculture. And in a way, it's oftentimes people, once they get in, they can find a place, but it's that initial rejection that I think brings a lot of the strength. Yeah,
so I know with P5 that's something that is definitely trying to happen, is just try to really reach out to people of all different kinds, artists and designers and everyone in between, and really make technology something that they are also interested in. So, all right, so thank you so much, and we really hope that you can continue this discussion over dinner and tomorrow during the brainstorm and also anytime throughout the week. And thank you to all of our great speakers, both on Google Hangouts and here with us today at the conference. And thank you all for listening.